This week's episode is brought to you by Weston Ferry. If you too would like to support the show and join the conversation, head on over to www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where $5 will earn you access to our Discord server, where all the taboo subjects from the show are discussed freely and openly. It's a lot of fun, but it doesn't stop there. That $5 will also get you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our cover art. And while supplies last, there's a generous gift from our Patreon, Mari Sama, who designed an Eat Carrots Shoot Laser sticker. I think it's sparkly. I haven't seen them yet, but I will send them to new subscribers. There's not going to be many. Get them while they last. You'll also get a members-only show each month. That comes with the $5. Then there's 2 higher tiers. The first tier up, I give you tarot readings. The tier up from that, I'll teach you how to read tarot. On this episode, I discuss the satanic manifesting power inherent in video games and how it can be interpreted through Hindu or psychological terms, and some theory about how video games can be used magically through astral travel and the law of attraction. The Patreon section includes a slightly deeper analysis on these themes, dives into Gnosticism, my personal life, and what it all has to do with Jumanji and the Nicolas Cage movie Mandy. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Mouse balls dropping everywhere. I wish my rabbit balls would drop already. What did you get for using a trackball, Luke? Everybody hates trackballs. That's why you shouldn't use one. Besides, anyone who uses a trackball uses the same one. It's the chicken cutlet. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's a Logitech M570. It's the only trackball any trackball user uses, and the reason they use it is because it is absolutely essential if you don't want to be flipping around your wrist like some ninny all the time. You get the carpal tunnels that way. And besides, what's the difference between a trackball and the little ball that you have on your console controller? The only difference is there's a little stick with a wafer on top of it. That's the only difference. You're basically using a trackball. I guess it's a trackball that returns back to 0 in the middle, and I guess it doesn't roll. But that's one of the advantages of a trackball is you can literally roll it. And you can like spin around really fast that way if you're like in Counter-Strike or whatever. So there are some advantages to having a trackball. And you're aiming with your thumb instead of like your whole wrist or your whole arm. And your arm can get tired sometimes. The little wrist, that little like crook in your elbow, which they told me in school, if 2 elbows touch, that's the only time it's not sexual harassment. Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just let you live your perfect digital fantasy life on your own personal island paradise. Not if you're the second player to pick up the Nintendo Switch and boot up the fast-spreading, nearly viral phenomena that's Animal Crossing. No. We force you, regardless of which profile you're using, onto the island that Player One created, because that is how Manifest Destiny works, my friends. Tom Nook pretty much has us kidnapped and is working as an indentured slave in an ocean beset with secret islands navigated by quote-unquote extinct dodo birds running a clandestine network of small aircraft to effing burn the maps once they've been visited and utterly stripped of their natural resource by the player for God knows what evil reason, because today we're discussing video game magic, or more technically, the magical psycho-spiritual effects generated from projecting one's psyche/astral body into the imagined digital landscapes and sympathetically using their contents to produce manifest results in real life through the strangely functional, artistic medium of video games. Arguably the newest, most dangerous, controversial, and robust artistic medium ever invented by humans. Wait, what? It's the law of attraction in video games and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay? Does that make sense? I'm your host, Luke Madrid, and today I'm joined by Mr. Horse. Hi, Mr. Horse. How are you doing? Brr, I'm doing just fine, Luke, but I don't want to hang out with you because you're an asshole. Thanks, Mr. Horse. Now, I just bring up Animal Crossing first because everybody and their mom literally are playing this game. It's like Skyrim, but with turnips. That's not true, because I know what to do with things in Skyrim. I cannot figure out how to buy the turnips and then sell them at all. I can't even remember that I bought the turnips, and I usually only remember on Sunday. So every Sunday I log in just to find my rotten turnips. That's how I play Animal Crossing. I don't know if that's a good assessment of the game from your perspective, but probably not, because everybody's got their own experience and it'll be a little bit different. Kind of. Video games, unlike painting or movies, seem to have a tactile, practile, functional, and even ritualistic aspect built into them that other mediums must strain themselves to implement. Film, you can control the vertical and horizontal, but the audience is typically not given a choice about how the movie ends, or what characters do beyond interpreting the film differently, or just focusing on different aspects of the film. That's the only way to really change it, besides maybe going and editing the film yourself, but then you've moved beyond just being the audience at that point. You're now like a director of your own movie, even though you're stealing most of what you are using, which from what I understand, and I learned this from Patreon Mari Sammy, Wolfenstein 3D was partially created using the Windows screensaver software where you're like going through the hallways, and that's partially why it looks so much like that. She also mentioned that you can think of video games as basically like those choose your own adventure books, where it's like, if you want to go down this hallway, go to page 36. And if you want to go down the stairs, go to page 18. And I remember Goosebumps had a series of books that worked in that way, and it was really frustrating if you died or got killed, because then you could go back, though, to the last page you were on if you kept track of it, right? And that is kind of like a checkpoint, right, in a game. So, in a sense, you do get to choose what's going on in games. Sometimes, some games it's more than others. There's different various degrees of participation. And nowadays, there's even Netflix. On Netflix, you can do a choose your own adventure. I saw a Bear Grylls episode where he would choose either to walk across the ice quickly or kneel across it or something like that. And there was all these different options. But yeah, so gaming is kind of like getting into the mainstream. And it's sort of been in the mainstream for a while. See, this is the problem with having a single voice podcast, is it's challenging for me that conversation could branch in all these different directions. For the magicians and manifestors, I want to discuss methods and rituals and fun tools you can enjoy with video games. But I also want to address the weird, creepy, fun, esoteric symbolism that our kids get to drown in while they're playing these dang old games. So where do I start? I suppose the people who don't want to hear about the conspiracy theories and stuff, you guys will just have to fast forward a little bit. You'll have to use your magic tools called your hands. Use your yod and spin it about in a circle on the way to the fast forward by 15 seconds and click it like as many times as Thoth tells you to, and then you'll land exactly where you need to be. I don't mean to tell you how to be a magician. I'm just telling you what I do, okay? And I do weird stuff. So now that I've admitted and confessed on the air that I'm a weird person that does weird magic rituals, I can talk about some of the weird esoteric symbolism that I saw in these games as a kid and still do today. Why in Animal Crossing is everybody a kid? Or am I just imagining that? Their heads are large in proportion to their bodies. This is a physiological characteristic of children, so maybe that's why I think that. Next, if you strongly believe that evolution is a satanic agenda meant to pull children and spiritual children away from God, then this game has some hardcore propaganda about evolution. This game seems to suggest that life begins in the ocean and evolves slowly over millions of effing years. The quote-unquote museum even shows how the sentient bipedal monstrosities they call characters in this game evolved from their more primitive forms, suggesting that the player who is bound to their humanity has actually evolved from an ape. A friggin' ape that goes all the way back to some slime creature in the ocean. Man, don't you see how they're it's not really just that. It's what is with the tunnels in the museum? Why can't I go in those doors? Where do they lead to? Who is powering that island? Where does the power come from? Who is paying those bills? And why is the money called bells? Why? Why Bell? Are we doing everything for Bell? Is Bell our god? I'm just saying, think about it. Now, this is not the first time a neurotic, paranoid, inner evil projecting parent has gotten their undies in a scrunch about video games and their potential negative effect on the fragile child mind. No, I was born in 1987, which means I was about 6 years old when the original Doom was released on DOS in 93, which also means, by extension, my childhood was awesome. Now, I'm not saying I skipped Wolfenstein. I remember it being called Spear of Destiny, and It played on a hilariously primitive computer my dad had installed in the kitchen, of all places. We had a computer in just about every room, but the kitchen computer we did the word processing on, especially for school projects. And I remember my mother telling me that he had installed Spear of Destiny as a form of therapy to help her release stress from working as a critical care nurse in the hospital she worked. Now, she did not approve of me playing this game at whatever age I was, but I had it good, and they eventually let me play it. Now, most parents were absolutely against satanic pentagrams, machine guns, and buckets of blood that come bundled with Doom. Doom had big, scary, evil devil faces everywhere, and I think America had had enough of that. They had just lived through the satanic panic in the 80s. They were still very superstitious, even though it was pretty much like the witch burning times where, without getting too much into it here, a bunch of powerful, wealthy, privileged people with knowledge on the actual subject probably blamed their crimes on a bunch of innocent teachers, social workers, and parents who had nothing to do with it. Regardless, the game is still pretty spooky today. Modern titles of Doom always include a huge graphical update, as the psychedelic novelty of primal danger and a visually overstimulating environment is just part of the fun. It has to be blowing your mind and scaring the hell out of you at the same time. Otherwise, it's not doing the trick. Though you can still go back and play the original Dooms, and the level of excitement and adrenaline pumping and even fear to some extent is elevated compared to what you'll get with most shooters. There's something very visceral and beautiful about the Doom series, and even 3. Like, people talk smack on 3, but I thought 3 was also pretty fun. I really just can't handle the platforming in the latest one. I'll admit, I can play Celeste, I can play Mario, but the platforming in that game, it's too much platforming. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. I really love Doom, really don't like the platforming in the new Doom. And maybe I just sound like Rocco, okay? I want the Doom to be exactly how it used to be. Okay, move on from this, Luke. I know you can move forward from the things that upset you. I know you can do this. Okay. So, now, I could imagine this overstimulating Doom, buckets of blood stuff. For some parents in the early 90s was as taboo as porn. I remember my parents had me playing a Sesame Street game on a floppy disk that required like a typed command line to boot. And this was the same machine that ran Wolfenstein 3D, but you had to do like, I don't remember, but as a kid I had it memorized. It was like /C, run, program thingamabob, and it was all like one word. And I memorized like it in a weird way. It was fun. Good times being a 90s kid. I even remember playing an airplane side-scroller that run off an 8-inch floppy disk. I don't remember my dad having any in the 5.25-inch ones, but I do recall having a zip disk for my high school classes at Foothill Technology High School. They required you to have a floppy disk. Now, from what I understand, at this point in the school's history, it was still pretty new. There were no real fights that had occurred on campus. Go figure. Nerd school, right? No real fights. I'm pretty sure there's been fights about Magic cards, though, since, so we won't get into that. Anyway, the one thing that did famously occur, the big fight that we know did occur, was over a zip disk in a computer lab. Now, this was inevitable because each class was connected to a central computer lab. So it was like you had 6 classrooms that were all connected by one central thing called a pod. And this was the best school ever to go to. I don't know what it's like now, but it was amazing when I went. And at first I didn't want to go because I thought all the cute girls would be at Buena High School, which is not entirely untrue because they had cheerleaders, which they forced us to watch at the pep rallies. And this just made me amorous, and I don't think anyone else appreciated that. I digress. The girls at Foothill were gorgeous when I was the age I was when I went there. Anyway, moving on. The 8-inch floppy disk with the airplane that scrolled to the right, from what my research has shown, it's kind of remarkable because I think only home-based consoles had side-scrolling mastered, and they were monopolizing on it because the graphics processing power contained within those units were more powerful than the ones in your standard PC that was running DOS. As such, side-scrollers were usually too intensive for them to run at all, and it was the brilliant young John Carmack who managed to figure it out. He entirely remade, with John Romero on his team, Super Mario 3 in just a few weeks while he was working for Softdisk, and submitted it to Nintendo in 1990, who rejected it because they wanted to keep selling their Nintendos. They didn't want to undercut their sales by having people play their products on PC. Carmack was crushed but continued onward and made the legendary Commander Keen with that same technology. So, while other kids were learning how to blow cartridges, I was figuring out what a sound blaster was, what a VGA adapter looked like, and how to save the game right before a very difficult, challenging sequence. Because simply touching one of those little robots, you have to start the entire level over again, from scratch, with one less life and all the ammunition you had from the last run. Going without saves makes the game incredibly difficult. However, you are able to save the game at any point. So if you're skillful at saving, it's possible to progress the game and experiment over and over with difficult jumps. I don't believe this was a feature of console games at this point. Audience, were there console games in 1990 and 1993 where you could save at any point? If you know of one, please put it in the comments. That'd be very interesting for me to know. It was John Carmack who created Commander Keen, along with the glorious-haired John Romero and the artistically brilliant Tom Hall, whose dark visions would fuel much of the ambiance of this era. We have him to thank for the artistic direction in Catacomb, which was a softest title. I actually remember playing Catacomb. Wolfenstein, Doom, and Rise of the Triads. Hover Tank 3D and Red Faction. From what I understand, these three individuals worked together at Softdisk and would essentially steal the work computers over the weekend and return them Monday morning before the shift would start. And they did that so that they could have their own company use John Carmack's engine for themselves without it being owned by Softdisk and create a life for themselves. How did they distribute their games? Well, they took a strategy from a guy named Scott Miller, the founder of Apogee Software Productions. Miller had the brilliant idea of making game demos, giving them away for free without any licensing or copying restrictions. At the end of the demo, there would be contact information where you could send money to Scott Miller and receive the full game back in the mail, like in the form of floppy disks. This cut out a lot of the middlemen and became the method by which early devs would rise to power and prominence from the sweat and labor of their own brow. Apogee Games would later become 3D Realms, a studio I know and love for giving me Duke Nukem 3D, the coolest game a 9-year-old could ever possess. You could give strippers money and they would show you their boobies. I remember this whole giving strippers money and seeing their boobies and then running around and shooting giant pigs that have LAPD written on it. If you remember the old Duke Nukem 3D games, it had that. And shooting space aliens and talking smack. It dovetails a lot with what we talked about in our Clockwork Orange episode. And I still get some heat over bringing up video games in that episode, but ultraviolence was a setting as a difficulty in Doom. The creators knew what the concept was. Wolfenstein loads in with a message in ye old font saying, "Get psyched," as a little red bar races to the right of the screen. I recall in 2016, the top review for Doom on Steam said something like, "It's like taking 2 rails of cocaine. How could you say no?" Something like that. My point is, the overstimulating, overly violent atmosphere combined with the desire and necessity to dominate, to win, throws the player into some truly orgasmic dances of bloody, vicious savagery and combines them with some blissful state of flow that only some people can truly appreciate. I think that's what the ultraviolence is, right? You know, you drink the Pepsi and you get the ultraviolence on. The only thing is you're not hurting any actual people. You're doing your evil bad thing within the game. So for starters, I was told that Wolfenstein 3D was therapy for Mom. She was waist deep in blood and the kind of nurse that really could have used something to blow off stress like that. From what I understand, she didn't play it really. And there was no attempt to beat the game, but the idea was still something that she was into. That was like the third title. It actually used to be a stealth game. But by the third installment, Wolfenstein 3D, it definitely was not a stealth game anymore. In fact, it can't even be said to be true 3D. The illusion of 3D was created by a technique called ray tracing. I tried paraphrasing, but I couldn't do better than what they said on Wikipedia. Raycasting is a technique in which a ray for every vertical slice of the screen is sent from the position of the camera. These rays shoot out until they hit an object or wall, like on a 2D plane, and then that wall is rendered in a vertical slice, which gives it the illusion of 3D, basically. So it's like, it's taking the information from a flat plane with a dot and a field of vision, and then it extrapolates the vertices and shades them in a way that makes it seem like there's a y-axis, though you can't really aim up or down. and you can't really move up or down. And I think even the staircase, I don't know how the stairs work in that instance, but I'm not an expert. Basically, in 10 short years, what, you go from 1996 or 1993 in that to 1994, okay, and you go forward 10 years. World of Warcraft is looking pretty good. Like, it's not the best looking game in the world. And then 10 more years, you could stare straight into Big Boss's butt cheeks as they're flapping across the Afghanistan desert. But so what, Luke? What does it have to do with magic? In short, when one is gazing into the black mirror of their computer screen, they are recreating three-dimensional space in their mind the same way they would if they were reading, meditating, or performing astral travel. In some sense, video games are controlled astral travel through worlds generated in a black mirror on your TV or your handheld device. It can be summed up in PlayStation's old motto, live in your world, play in ours. John Carmack is the guy now who owns Oculus Rift and works tirelessly to create a more appealing and affordable product with the expressed intention of allowing as many people as possible the opportunity to live as close to their ideal life as possible from the comfort and privacy of their own home. When accused of creating a high-tech Band-Aid for a dark world, he retorts, and this is an inexact quote, imagine it, but without the Band-Aid. Is it better now? Like I said, not an exact quote, but I completely agree with the sentiment. Is John Carmack creating the dark world, or is he creating something for you to enjoy within the dark world? Honestly, video games were such an awesome part of my childhood. I didn't always have other kids to play with. I didn't have a brother or sister, and sometimes your schedule with the other kids on the block don't always line up. Sometimes they're in trouble. Sometimes they have dinner with their family. Sometimes they're off on a boating trip that you don't get to tag along to. And you can go play Wave Race at home, and it's okay, even though you wanted to go with your friend or whatever. And I get that, dude. And then when they come home, you can play Wave Race together. And guess what? You'll be fucking better at it than they will be. Sucks to be them. Sucks that they have a real boat. They're never going to be as good at you as you are in Wave Race, right? So, thank you, John Carmack. I know you didn't create Wave Race, but hey, I did play a bit of Commander Keen as quote-unquote research for this episode, and like I said, I found it to be very difficult, and I had to use save points. I did a live show of it on Instagram, and people were telling me how to get past stuff because they were like Googling it and telling me, because I couldn't figure out how to get past like some holes that were shaded in the floor. I thought they were just windows. I didn't know you could fall through them, and you need to do that to complete the level. So it's really hard to say if people like John Carmack are into occultism, or more specifically Satanism, which is what I'm going to bring up right now. I don't get the impression that they're I say they because I'm kind of like lumping in Elon Musk as they're friends, and I'm going to bring up Elon Musk. I don't get the impression that those two guys are into Satan as a theological concept, but I do believe that they are aware of Satanism and the principles in it, and how they relate and link to ancient concepts, and how those ancient concepts have influenced our modern concepts. They're programmers, and they're intelligent people. So I don't know if they believe in this stuff, but I think they're aware that some of their philosophies might coincide with it. What do I mean by that? John Carmack took his programming station with him on his honeymoon. He talks about this on the JRA Experience. The man has limited time. He believes the 8 hours of sleep are necessary. His body is a battery of brilliant programming ideas, and he's only got so much time in the day to use it. I don't know what else there is to say on the subject, except knowing the value of their own time. Like, John Carmack and Elon Musk is like evaluated very differently from yours and mine. I'm fighting bitterly right now just to like go eat chips and like spend an hour scrolling through Instagram in a coma of nightmare daydreams and the bad decisions I've made in life. But Carmack has a new fuel delivery system or an engine to render 3D spaces more efficiently with. While listening to John Carmack talk on the JRE, I couldn't help but be reminded of some of the things I'd read in the Satanic Bible, specifically book number 4. The Book of Satan, book number 4. Life is the great indulgence, death the great abstinence. Therefore, make the most of life here and now. they live with this philosophy that there's only so much time, that death is going to win. And in order to have any sort of recourse against it, you should create something that will survive your death. That's the only immortality you're ever going to have. There's no use spending your time praying into your hands for eternal life. What you should be doing is creating a software company or a rocket or something that's going to carry on your legacy. There is no heaven of glory bright, and no hell where sinners roast. Here and now is our day of torment. Here and now is our day of joy. Here and now is our opportunity. Choose ye this day, this hour, for no redeemer liveth. Whoa! So they're saying if the game looks fun, just play it. I mean, like, you only have so much time in your life. Enjoy the time that you have. Don't hold out for some other thing. Like, don't hold out for the real wave race. Go do it yourself. And, like, that's the other thing. Like, what would they do? Right? They would find time to do both. The judge finds time. Say unto thine own heart, I am my own redeemer. So instead of asking someone to make the perfect game for you, you go out and make it yourself. You don't like the movies you see on TV? Go out and make one yourself. You don't like the podcast that you hear on the radio? Go out and make one yourself. Number 4, stop the way of them that would persecute you. Let those who devise thine undoing be hurled back to confusion and infamy. Let them be as chaff before the cyclone after they have fallen. Rejoice in thine own salvation. So that's like saying, whatever you're going to do, just do it. People are going to hate you, and there's going to be people that are going to stop you. And if you let those people stop you, then you deserve to lose anyway. So you just keep going. Number 5. Then all thy bones shall say pridefully, who is like unto me? Have I not been too strong for mine adversaries? Have I not delivered myself with my own brain and body? So that's also like against death. If death is your enemy, you don't have people as enemies, you know death is your enemy. Then when death shows up, you can be like, what can you do to me? I've done so much work. I've spread my name. You'll never delete my name from history. I'll be here forever. Sorry, death. I'm a black star. Is that what David Bowie was saying? It's hard to say. Some people really, and John Carmack talks about this. He's like, I want to spend my time programming instead of my time running companies. Where Elon Musk, if he's going to be successful, he has to spend a lot of time talking and running his company rather than actually sitting there and doing the body of the work himself. Have we gotten a little bit into the weeds talking about John Carmack and Elon Musk's mentality on life? Have we? I mean, these are the people that are, okay. John Carmack built my childhood. He gave me a game where I could play Commander Keen, who's basically Luke Skywalker, right? He's got a helmet with a V on it, I think. He's Red 5, right? He's got a blaster. He's got a pogo stick. I don't know if that makes him Luke Skywalker, but there's definitely John Carmack being a little bit of Luke Skywalker. And like, did John Carmack, did he manifest his own spaceship using that game? He gets to mod Ferraris? I mean, it was a big mouthful what I just said. Strange, you never see mouth holes in inventory slot in video games. Though, if there was a game which had it, it would probably be Metal Gear Solid, and I'm surprised there's no butt slot in Metal Gear Solid. You might need to hide something. Perhaps the GTA series will get that on first. I'm rooting for you, number 6. I hope that you get to play as a woman cop attempting to rise above the corruption of their like racist genocidal veteran partner who has like the embodiment of the blue streak of unmitigated death following them, you know. It'd be good to contrast with the noticeably male protagonist where you always play as the criminal, but it'd be cool if you played as a cop, but sometimes the cops are the criminals. That's the only suggestion I have, Rockstar. I don't know. I don't mean to be complaining. Really, I've loved all the protagonists in the GTA series, but I think the ladies would like one. I think it'd be nice to have a lady. Maybe they could do the multiplayer thing again. I don't mean multiplayer, but like where you play as multiple characters, like the Watch Dogs game that's gonna come out. Oh yeah, nobody cares. I forgot. I'm kidding. I'm a GTA fanboy, so I'm bound to talk smack by my Discordian oaths and heap wretched, awful insults upon Ubisoft's masterpieces because their new logo is so ugly. I'm almost used to looking at it. But if I can't launch the game from Steam, there's a problem. I don't know why any other platforms don't seem to work correctly. But yeah, Watch Dogs sounds amazing. Don't know if it's come out yet. Too busy reading articles about what GTA 6 may or may not be. Blame it on an over-identification with Batman villains that I know very little about. Or maybe just Jim Carrey, but I'm summoned to remember the words of the Flaming Lips in Bad Days. You're sorta stuck where you are, but in your dreams you can buy expensive cars, or live on Mars and have it your way. And you hate your boss at your job, well, in your dreams you can blow his head off. In your dreams, show no mercy. And this really stands at odds with the classical Catholic notion that if you thought it, you did it. It runs satanically counter to this notion. Also to the notion that what happens on Earth stays on Earth. Because it suggests that it matters what we do here on Earth with the time that we have, and that our imagination, what we do with that internally, is not something that we'll be judged for, and is not something that we should feel guilty about, even if we do bad or naughty things in our imagination. So, is that something you subscribe to? Is that something you believe in? I do tend to... It's hard to say, isn't it? Because if you believe in magic, and you believe you have the power to hurt and to kill by bending the life force energies, is it responsible to imagine somebody's undoing? Is it responsible to sit there and stew and think about murdering someone over and over and over? In a magical sense, you could be responsible for doing something that hurts somebody else. In this way, it's always confused me when a magician believes that weaponry is too dangerous for the population, but the most dangerous secrets in magic, which include curses that can end somebody's life, are totally acceptable. I think that belies or betrays a lack of belief in one's magic. Because, well, that's my own personal belief. If you're somebody that does not believe in the spooky action at a distance, if you're somebody that believes your imagination is entirely something that is to yourself, that has no effect on the outside world, then you have every liberty to play around in that environment and for there to be nothing wrong with it. Well, where does the rubber meet the road? What's the truth here? This is something I've wondered about for a long time. When I got into magic, I immediately had to run up against one of my long-held beliefs, which had been, you could say, had been programmed into me by the media or by my upbringing, because this isn't something, I don't think this is something my parents disagree with. I don't want to speak for them, but I believe they raised me to believe that what I imagine in my imagination is sacred, and I'm free to do whatever I want in my imagination. Where I'm sure some kids were told, don't even think about that. Don't entertain those ideas even, you know? Most parents teach kids to have some sort of discernment, but this is like a little more a specific point. Now, I feel pulled to bring up the concept of Leela in Hinduism because it relates to some of these concepts that we're talking about here in terms of gaming and manifest reality and the overwhelming feeling of energy, life force, and especially of the capacity that could push one to be a warrior and fight in the physical world. Something that is so stimulating to one's energy that it could rise one into a higher state where they could use more energy, right? And it's this idea of Leela, or play. And it has several different meanings, but in Sanskrit, it means play, sport, spontaneity, or drama. All the different meanings focus one way or another on the effortlessness or the playful relation between the absolute Brahman and on the contingent world. So, if this were an Egyptian Ankh, it would be the interaction between the loop, the infinite, and the cross, the material world. If we're talking Thelema, it would be the connection between one's holy guardian angel and one's material self. And so, the expression of love under will, and even the New Age concept of following one's excitement, the idea that you are the feeling of joy and happiness inside of you, all sort of weaves into this concept. And so there's this idea of gaining life force from doing what one loves. Anton LaVey talks about this in some of his later works, where he's been freed of the voice of Aquino and others, where he's purely speaking from himself. I honestly can't remember the name of the book because I loaned it to a girl I'll probably never see again. And the book says that old people are surrounding themselves with things of their era, dressing and clothing of their era, because it's literally giving them life force. And so any city that's inhabited by any number of aging people will naturally resist having new buildings that have new architectural designs and things of that sort. And that we all attain life force from basically the artwork, the themes, the music, the stuff, the fashion that was around during when our sexual energy was at its peak. And so this goes into the idea, this bridges Satanism and Hinduism, because in the Shakta traditions, Leela is generally understood as a certain sweet, playful goodness that characterizes a universe whose essential nature is Shakti, the powerful, energetic principle. This is the same Shakti energy that you associate with Kundalini, right? It's a flaming serpent energy. It's a feminine energy. In some left-hand path traditions, it's the feminine energy that we've been denied. It's the bodily, sexual, horny principle, you know? It's the principle of life and death. All things born of woman must die. You know, when you have an erection and you have an orgasm, you lose a little bit of life force. But it's also the life force that vivifies the universe. It's that sense of play. And the sense of play which rises the energy to that point of orgasm in the first place. And this is like thought that can exist outside of the confines of your like sheltered Christian schema of all sexuality being bad, because, you know, Lucifer is the devil, right? Lucifer, the bright and shining morning star, the goddess of love and of war. I mean, what brings a man to go and die? The promise of maybe seeing a woman naked again and playing with her boobies, I guess. I don't want to get too graphic, but the connection is there. You go and fight to protect what is sacred, what is beautiful, what is precious. And it's in pursuit of what is sacred and what is precious that the energy rises. And so, bam, let's go kill some demons. Yo, you know, like, some people just shoot the strippers and stuff. I'm not about that life, but I know plenty of people are. It's not real, right? You should, in your dreams, have it your way. The drunk heart speaks. What is it? No, the drunk speaks the heart of the truth of the heart. I'm not drunk right now, but I could be. I'm trying to channel the drunkenness to get the saying, I promise. I don't really drink, but if I did, I would be having fun. So, well, what's doing the playing, okay? What is playing the game? Well, you're playing the game, kind of. The infinite, you're like the part that's outside of the simulation, right? The infinite factor that can quit the game whenever you want and walk away. Not have to worry about the troubles inside of the game. You don't have to worry about the cost of the fucking turnips. You can just turn it off. You don't have to worry about the weeds in your garden. You can just turn it off. The game, if it's Wolfenstein, might call you a wussy if you try and quit, and then you'll have to be like, oh man, am I really a wussy? And then you have to like have a mental battle with the game to be like, look, I'm stronger than this game. I decide if I come or go, right? And so is Wolfenstein like pro-suicide on that level? Psh, hope not. Who knows? Is that conscious or I don't want to get into it. But the point is who's playing the game? The avatar. The avatar. This is another concept in Hinduism, where there's a physical vessel or manifestation that a god takes to interact with the material world, usually to defeat some evil. Does this sound vaguely familiar to pretty much every single game you've played? Dragonborn, Hero of Time, Chosen One? Some people, of course, don't like to be bound by that whole you're the hero convention and prefer to create an avatar of their own choosing. I do this. If I have the choice of creating my own character, I will sit there for an hour or two and make that character. And then once I've made the dang old character, I might sit there for another 15 minutes to an hour trying to figure out the name, especially if the names that I want are taken, because I'm going to usually pick the same name. And I'm likely going to pick an avatar that looks a bit like me, because that's just what I enjoy in a game. I like to play a character that looks like me. That's also why it's important to have single-player games have female characters and black characters and characters of every color and, all the different genders and stuff. That's why, I hear you can choose your own genitals in Cyberpunk, whatever. See, that's awesome. I believe that we need customization in games for this very reason. So when you choose your avatar, you can have it be a full expression of your inner excitement, your inner light, your inner truth. And you can act out your inner truth in the freedom of that world. That's what the world is there for. It's for you to enjoy it in that way. Even if it whoops your ass, it makes you lose. Even if it makes you so frustrated, the only thing you can do is whine about it in chat and have people say, get good. I mean, every game is a different community, and those communities change based on who's playing, right? And you have an input, and you influence that community, however you want to think of it. So you get an avatar, and a thing about an avatar is it can kind of be copied, right? You can have another character that gets your same armor, gets your same body even, same body shape. Maybe they have more money than you, and they can just buy that stuff, right? But they can't steal your name, because your name is like another part of your soul, your avatar here, right? So no matter how much they want to look like you or cheat the game or whatever, you have your own screen name. And your screen name, I would relate that to your name soul, or your Ren is what they would call it in the ancient Egyptian. It was believed to exist as long as the name was spoken. So likewise, they had a golden rope that surrounded it in a cartouche, and buildings and additional temples were always trying to be built by the pharaoh so that their name would be more likely to stay included on those big projects, because they could get chiseled out and replaced by newer or more relevant names, like if the manager of the thing changed or the high priest changed. And so if you had built enough stuff, it was likely your name would be somewhere and would continue to be spoken. This, in some sense, is the ancient concept of a scoreboard, trying to get your name as high up as it can go so it can't be chiseled off. Because long after one had died, if one's score was sufficiently high enough, they could essentially live forever. George Costanza in Seinfeld, when faced with the death of his Ren on a greasy pizza shop dwelling arcade game machine of Frogger, is willing to overcome any technical obstacle he normally wouldn't even lift a finger for in his normal life, and maneuver the machine across the street, risking life and limb just to protect his high score. I think ultimately he fails. Spoilers, I don't remember. It's Seinfeld, so of course he fails. But this, of course, just adds to the empowerment of the real-life Seinfeld, Larry David and Jason Alexander. Have I seen a Frogger joke that's funnier than that yet? No. Have I seen something that relates to... I don't know, but when I played the Commander Keen and all that, there was the names John Carmack and Tom Hall and all those things, but their scores were very low. So you were encouraged to surpass them, right? Which seems kind of generous. They could have put the real scores. They could get the highest score possible. There'd be no way you could beat them. They made the games. They encouraged me, okay? It's their fault. It's their fault. So even then, the first half of your name is just the name that other people see, and it allows them to contact you at a distance. It allows them to write you a letter or call you on the phone or contact you up close to track you down and make contact with you. Don't do that. I recently left a gift behind somebody's fence, and by crossing that boundary, I completely messed up the relationship. Completely. You can never cross somebody's boundaries and have it be okay. It's like wrong, you know? So the ultimate boundary that we have, though, is not even our avatar or physical body, because that can be violated at any time. There's a secret inner part of us that links us to the divine. I don't know much about it, but intuitively I can say it exists. And the video game equivalent would be our password. Something that's so personal to us that we can hold it in our memories and have it be completely safe from incursion from the outside world. Maybe it's something from our childhood or from a former time, but it's something that links us from that side of the window to this side of the window, and it's completely secret, and it's like the thing that gets paired with your screen name in order for you to have access to your avatar. So, you know, it's like when you're being asked by a doctor, what's your name? Where do you live? They're trying to test and see if you're actually there, because they know your body is there, but is the subjective, like, person that we think of as you, are they there? I mean, a lot of people that have suffered their parents having Alzheimer's or dementia feel that it's like watching their person die slowly, because they lose their name, they lose their memories, they lose the part of them that everyone else remembers as them, even though it's the same person. Technically, it's the same body, it's the same. And what binds our soul to our bodies? Once the body expires, like, you can't play anymore. Like, if someone messes up your avatar, if it gets stuck somewhere and the admin can't get you out, if your stats if there's a glitch in a file somewhere, like, you're done. You have to make a new avatar. You're done. Like, and so, yeah, our avatars are like our bodies, and our inner souls are like our names and our passwords. And we're moving into an era where our digital persona is so important. I don't know how many people I've talked to digitally this year versus talked to physically, and how important those interactions have been digitally. And now suddenly those stupid little things that we had before, like, oh, choose your background, or choose what crazy color you have, or what crazy effect you have, can, in some cases, like, make the interaction or break the interaction. It could be flirty in the right circumstance. It could be unprofessional in another. In some cases, like, it's just there to make you laugh. But it is important. And the things that we enjoy and the things that motivate us, those things are important. The things that get us excited, those are important. And when we feel free enough to play and express that inner excitement, that's when creation happens. So, why is money called currency? What's being conducted? I assume it's this expression of energy. It adds value to the economy. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Does the Pope shit in the woods? These are the types of questions I find myself being asked by the inner narratives we can hear when your avatar plays Grand Theft Auto and takes a hit of the bong. Interesting to note how each of the characters responds differently to the drugs they're given throughout the game. Trevor hates clowns, so that he sees his best friend, like, as one, is kind of a strange thing, isn't it? I'm fairly certain that Michael sees aliens when he takes a hit of the weed, and his whole family is like alien to him. And then Franklin takes a hit of the weed, and you know he's had finer stuff, because whatever sent his two older white boyfriends to the next dimension just ain't doing nothing to him. Why am I bringing up GTA again? It's my favorite game. Also, it's the best game ever made. This is, of course, a subjective statement, but various times throughout GTA 5's history, it's wandered in and out of being the most expensive and lucrative piece of media entertainment of all time. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I imagined the perfect game in my mind's eye. And it was something like GTA 5, but it had a more, like, smaller setting and an ambience like Postal. So besides these things, it's also the game I have used the most money magic with and had the most success. So being a gamer means choosing between titles and how you will spend your time playing them. I've sunk in over 500 hours into GTA 5, and a good portion of that time was during transitional phases in my life between jobs and living spaces.
I was having trouble finding direction in life and confused by all the follow your bliss type stuff you get and you're subjected to when you live in Southern California. It's expensive to live here. It's expensive as hell to live here. And it's expensive just to live in like someone's back house with like not even proper power or internet or plumbing, laundry. Something's going to be wrong, and it's still going to be expensive. It's not terrible advice to have a job that you can tolerate doing for 16 hours a day. So like even if you're good at making money, you're still strongly encouraged by your peers to exceed and keep working at your full potential, because that's the work culture. And while I was capable of doing a lot of different things, I wanted something that I could enjoy and excel at. That seems to be a logical conclusion. You should be able to put your excitement and your joy into your work. Salespeople know that it's much easier to sell something that you believe in. So here's where the magic comes in. You don't always know the nature of a job before you get started. Sometimes you get hired to do one thing and you end up doing another. Maybe you end up getting hired for something and it's exactly what you thought, but you actually hate it. For starters, in the absence of spiritual powers, video games show us that game loops are something that we can either enjoy or hate, and they show us which ones we enjoy. What's your favorite gameplay loop? What is a gameplay loop? Well, primitively, it's like from jumping one platform to the next, but maybe there's gathering ammo getting thrown in there. Maybe it's collecting enough points to level up. Maybe there's gathering materials to build items. Maybe you get hungry and need to find food and cook it. The gameplay loop is basically cycles you go through to play the game where you have room to optimize or just enjoy the different actions. So your goal, first of all, is to find a job where you don't hate the gameplay loop. You're looking for a job that mimics your favorite video games, the ones you can play all day, and you want it to be as close to that as possible with the loops in that job. So you want to be living the dream, right? You want to use the law of sympathy to get the universe to reward you in the same way it's rewarding you in the game for the exact same reason, because it's ultimately an illusion and you're just trying to have fun. I mean, we used to work to live. Now we live to work. That's what I'm talking about with this work culture, okay? And we have to reclaim that if we want to have happy lives. This is a big theme in Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm going to bring it up again. This theme of Sisyphus being happy. This is something that came up after World War II in the French theater when absurdity became a thing. I believe it was Albert Camus who wrote about Sisyphus being happy, that life ultimately has no meaning, and that it doesn't really matter what happens here, but it's the irrational part of us, the inner part of us that has total freedom, that gets to decide what our meaning is. And I've heard this used by atheists plenty of times, that in a world without God, you get to decide the meaning of your life. You get to decide what you do and how you do it and why you do it. And so we're back to this pseudo-satanic, atheistic, live for yourself mentality again. But also a mentality that sort of riffs and vibes with other religious notions, especially ones in Hinduism. And what is a game anyway, besides a little game within a bigger one? That's the whole point of a game. Instead of merely escaping into a game, you're trying to allow the game license to exit the box and make its way into your life. How did that work for me personally, right? I'd always wanted to be a rideshare driver, and like ever since it was a new service. I was young and I didn't have a Boss Haas car. I was too busy living my life the way I wanted to in other aspects to have a Boss Haas car. But I was down and out on my luck and desperate for a job, and I decided I needed to make something work. So I rented a car from one of these rideshare services, and upon taking a closer look at the numbers, I decided it was way more financially sound to just finance my own car. And I chose one that I would enjoy driving that would also suit my needs. I could have chosen one that I disliked for half the price, half the monthly payment. But I'm happy I chose the one I chose because I actually enjoy driving it. And so I slowly began digging myself out of the hole I had made. A few months went by and I had the flexibility and confidence to negotiate a position at a job that wouldn't normally be enough to financially meet all my needs. But now I had another stream of income, and I got to do a job that I genuinely enjoyed. And as I got to do that job, I made myself more available for it, and that became my main source of income, right? And so those two things like saved my life. And it was the video game magic and saying, I want this, I want to live this way, that made it happen. Are there any rideshare drivers out there that also play Elite Dangerous? The similarities between Elite Dangerous and rideshare driving, when you're new to both of those things, are pretty unbelievable. Because in Elite Dangerous, after a while they begin to trend apart, I would assume. But maybe not, You're zipping around in your ship with a computer interface, learning how to play the game, while you're making money, taking risks appropriate to your comfort level. The game pushes you, though, to be smarter, better, faster, stronger. The situations happen are straight out of GTA 5. I've driven people from their bachelor parties to a chapel where the bride is waiting. I've picked up hooded figures in Oxnard that are going about their shady business and are all too happy to talk about it. I've driven around and yelled at a junkie who had escaped rehab. And instead of driving him to the hotel where the speed was, I convinced him to go to the weed spot instead. I don't know if he did, but his girlfriend was on the phone and making him listen to me as I yelled at him. This dude started crying, man. That's all I got to say about that. The point is, art imitates life, and life imitates art in ways I would never not respect. This property of the universe works so well for me, and I've seen it work so well for others, and better for others, that it astounds me that more folks don't have an altar. It might be because they have 2 or 3 in the games they play. And to be frank, they work better because they have some vague semblance of how to actually use them. I mean, you're going into the astral world and you're constructing these things out of your psyche, and then you're activating them through the game. Why isn't an altar in a game an altar in some weird way? And take that knowledge how you will. If you believe witchcraft is evil, if you think magic is wrong for some reason, right? Take that as you will. Likewise, there's something else that links different universes together, and it really can't be overlooked by somebody with a podcast called The Whole Rabbit, and it's this concept of Easter eggs. Now, I have been beat up about this before for not knowing what an Easter egg is, and maybe they're right, but I used to think an Easter egg was like a hidden message by the creator within the work, but an Easter egg, I believe, is more properly a piece of another universe that has been placed within, a piece of universe B that's been placed inside of universe A, right? So in Duke Nukem, the one that I remember is in the prison level, you go into the chapel, and after dispensing a bunch of those LA pigs, you can hit a secret button, I believe, behind the altar, and this takes the crucifix behind you and lowers it down to an inverted crucifix, which allows you to walk through the crack of the crucifix, and you turn to the right, and there's the Doom Marine. The character that you play in Doom is there, like, dead or in a state of being, you know what I mean? He's compromised. He has like all his blood coming out and he's like holding his throat, and I think there's an altar behind him, and your character Duke Nukem says, "That's one doomed space marine." So that would be an example of an Easter egg. And now I know that what Miller and Carmack, they all knew each other, so that was it was a good laugh, right? And you've got like a whole movie series, the Avengers, where they take all these potentially different universes and weave them together, and then they have time travel and all these things to like fix it. And how many Spider-Mans are there, Spider-Man's not even... Yeah, how many Spider-Verses are there? But I don't know what that has to do with Easter eggs. I know that the dope fish from Commander Keen ends up in a lot of places. So if you want to Google a meme, Google dope fish. I remember dope fish being quite terrifying. You're in an underwater level, and typical to underwater levels, there's these gigantic aquatic creatures that are scary, and this thing is like, it's as huge as the screen, and I think it kills you like pretty easily. But here's okay. So like one of my favorite, and it's not an Easter egg, I guess. This is something else, but it's a hidden message in Duke Nukem. I believe it's like the final level in like San Andreas Fault of the first episode. There's a wall that's projecting a shrinking beam, and if you do no clip, you can fly over to the origin of that shrinking beam, and there's a message that says, "You're not supposed to be here." And then it's quoted by the level lord. When I was a little kid, I lived to find those things. I remember that I believe it was a game called Heretic. It was also by ID Software. If you typed in the punch code or the cheat codes from Doom, it would do the opposite thing to you. So if you typed like infinite health, you would die. Like if you did, I believe like IDDQD, you would die. And then if you did IDKFA, it would take away all your guns. Right? And I don't remember much else because those are the only two cheat codes I remember. But I do remember DN Cornholio, which might have made you invincible. Was it DN stuff or DN guns or DN? See, that's the thing about cheat codes, man. And, you know, I got to tell you a secret. I think I know the origin of like maybe where I brewed up Hack Rabbit, because I thought about my name on Easter. So I was primed to think rabbit, but I'm also a Chinese zodiac rabbit, right? So there's that. And it was on Easter, and I was like, I knew I wanted to be a rabbit. I knew that I wanted that to be my Ren for my DJ name, because I think my first Ren name online used to be Invisigoth, because I stole that from X-Files, because Invisigoth was like this like super hot goth girl that was a super powerful hacker and had found some sort of way to attain apotheosis through upgrading or uploading her consciousness to the internet. And as a little kid, I was like, that's obviously the goal of all existence, right? Because I had grown up playing all those DOS games. And so for the longest time, my screen name was Invisigoth, right? But you can't be no DJ Invisigoth, right? You gotta make decisions in life. And my decision was to be Hack Rabbit. And I want to talk a little bit about the video game I played as a kid. I think that might have made me Hack Rabbit. It relates to my family. And then I'm going to jump into some personal experiences I've had and some interpretations I have of different movies like Jumanji. I'm going to talk a little bit about Mandy. I'm going to talk a little bit about Astral Chain. I don't have a lot left to talk about, so you've pretty much heard the whole episode. But I also have a Patreon, and I've alienated a lot of people with all the stuff that I've put everyone through lately, and I could really use the subscribers. I'm still working. Anyway, I could use the subscribers. So go to www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, and for $5, you'll get access to our Discord. That's the coolest thing, because we've been having a great time on our Discord. We're just chit-chatting it up. We're talking about all sorts of stuff you can't talk about on Facebook. It seems like this is the meeting spot. But that $5 will also get you all your episodes early. You'll get the full entire episode, like uncut. You'll get like the extra hour if there is one. I don't know if there'll be a full extra hour in this one. Probably not. But you'll get whatever is left over, right? And I'm going to aim for it to be a full show. A full like extra hour. Then you do get a full extra show. I have a show that I do specifically for Patreons each month. Sometimes I talk to a guest. Sometimes I do interviews. Sometimes it's a stream of consciousness. There's lots of stuff I do. You'll also get a high quality 5x5 vinyl sticker that we get from Sticker Mule. Those dudes are awesome. That pretty much covers the $5 subscription. If you go up from there, you can get tarot readings from me each month. And then if you go up from there, I'll actually teach you how to read tarot yourself. And right now, while the subscriptions are fairly growing slowly, I'm going to be lenient about how much lessons and how much tarot I give. Like, I'm going to give it more than what I say I'm giving in the Patreon until it gets too crowded, and then I'm going to have to, like, keep it to a limit. But as of now, it's kind of this free-for-all weird witch school thing we have brewing. And if you can stand the asshole that I am, you're more than welcome to be in the party. make your way on over to Patreon, join up. It's going to cost you $5, and we'll get you in the Discord and start having fun. With that said, we got some stickers coming for you, and they're from a Patreon. And you know what they say? Eat carrots and shoot lasers.